Welcome to the second episode of Language Learning Talks, in which I'm going to talk to Tess de Weert. Tess de Weert is a Dutch English coach and English teacher, and she helps entrepreneurs and other interested people in becoming confident English speakers. Now, you might think it has only to do with the way you pronounce words in English and maybe something with grammar and vocabulary, but Tess has a completely different approach, and she uses a holistic view when it comes to helping her students and her clients become confident English speakers. So, without further ado, let's move into episode 2 of Language Learning Talks. So I'm here with Tess de Weert, who is an English teacher from the Netherlands, just like myself. So Tess, introduce yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? And what do you like about English?
Yeah, well, I'm Tess. I'm an English coach and an English teacher in the Netherlands. I have been teaching for, around 19, 20 years. And I'm still teaching for 2.5 days. So I have a part-time teaching job in the upper secondary levels. And I'm also an English coach. So I teach English to coaches and entrepreneurs, and I'm helping them to become confident English speakers.
Nice. I think that's a very nice target group. I think many of the viewers now are also probably not secondary school children, but maybe entrepreneurs who need English in their daily lives. So you focus a lot on confidence, on speaking confidently, and I like that. I think that's a very nice niche because it's more than only knowing the language. So how would you define a confident English as a second language speaker?
Well, a confident English speaker to me is a person who is not afraid to make mistakes, a person who can speak, and even though he or she knows that there's an accent, that they still feel confident enough to convey their message in an authentic way, so they can completely be themselves. And I think the most important thing is not worry about mistakes and not worry about how you sound to other people. Just conveying a clear message to other people with confidence.
All right. So in a few previous episodes, I talked about native-speakerism. Do you think this is something that holds people back? The idea that they need to sound as a real native speaker?
Yeah, definitely. It's something I come across a lot. A lot of my clients, their English is great, actually. But the thing is, somehow the idea has a risk that we should sound like native speakers. And I think that's a bit problematic because, first of all, what is a native speaker? If you look at all the different countries, Australia, Great Britain, America, and everything, all the countries that they speak English in, I mean, they all have different languages, different words, different accents. So what is a native speaker? And not just that, but I just think that it's more important to convey a message that is clear and understandable. And we don't have to imitate native speakers. Because I think that's where most of the insecurity of my clients come from, that they think they sound too Dutch, for example.
Yeah, I think I agree. And I think if we look at our country, I think we're a bit, I think we overdo it a bit with the native speakerism. Our Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, he has a very strong Dutch accent. We had Louis van Gaal, who has a very strong Dutch accent. And I think that holds people back, definitely. And I think we keep comparing ourselves to native speakers, even though we're probably never going to talk to native speakers. So can you say,
It's funny because Dutch people, the bar for English is set so high in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem.
Maybe it's our fault as English teachers. Maybe we want too much.
Yeah.
Could be. Yeah. So can you say something about the setting in which your clients use English?
Yeah, well, I have many different clients, and they all need English for different things. I have a couple of clients who need English because they are going to do events in English. One of them, for example, is going to speak in America and in Italy and Germany, and he really needs to level up his English speaking skills for that. And I have another client who's going to give events on an international level as well. And I also have people who really need English for their work. they want to, reach an international market. And I also have people who come to me because they want to learn how to communicate, for example, with the in-laws better.
Okay, so that's a very diverse group of people. Very interesting.
Yeah,
Good
absolutely.
stuff. Yeah. So we already touched upon it slightly, but what are other things next to native speakerism that might keep English language learners back when it comes to speaking and using English confidently?
I think one of the most important things that all my clients have in common is the fear of making mistakes. And it's actually funny because a lot of them are quite successful entrepreneurs, and they know that failure is part of the process, and they know that, making mistakes is important. But when it comes to English, they think they have to be perfect. And they're very afraid of making mistakes, and that fact is holding them back a lot.
Okay. So what kind of things do you let them do to get over that fear?
Well, a couple of things. I do think that, because a lot of them come to me and they say, well, I've had English classes, I've studied grammar and vocabulary, and it didn't really work for me. And I understand that, because if you have a hurdle to overcome, if you have a fear of speaking English, I mean, it's awesome that you have grammar knowledge and vocabulary knowledge and all kinds of other knowledge of the language. But if you have a fear of speaking, then you're not going to activate that knowledge, right? You're not going to use it. So one of the first things that I'm doing with my clients is a lot of mindset work, actually. Just looking at, okay, but what exactly is holding you back? What are the things that make you afraid of speaking English? And then try and focus on that first.
Right. So your coaching sessions are more real coaching sessions instead of language learning sessions.
Yeah, that's why I call myself a confidence coach, because I know language is an important part, but we have to start with mindset first, because if they don't work on their mindset, then they're not going to improve their English speaking skills.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I believe that we should stop teaching grammar. So if you're one of my students, you've probably heard me say something about stop teaching grammar. But I agree with everything you said. It's about mindset, confidence, using the language and making mistakes. I make lots of mistakes all the time, even in class. And I sometimes see students think, that's weird. Right. So is there something else that you think might hold people back when they try to speak English confidently?
Yeah, I also hear a lot of people tell me that they can't really be themselves in English. So they do have a gap, so their Dutch is fine. And when they speak Dutch, they can be authentic themselves. They can say whatever they want to say. And as soon as they have to speak English, there is a knowledge gap. And then one of the most important reasons for them to come to me is, I really want to have the same energy in English as I have in Dutch, especially when you're going on stage, right? And then they say, when I have time to really prepare what I'm going to say, for example, give a training, it's fine. But when I'm on stage, I want to improvise. I want to be authentic. I want to be enthusiastic. And the fact that they're not really able to do that in English holds them back a lot.
Oh, yeah. So it's also a bit of theater that you do in your sessions.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I do a lot of online sessions, but sometimes, especially with the clients who are doing events and speaking on stage, I really want to see them in person, because I want to know what happens to your body or your face when you speak English, so that we can also focus on that. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you also have them record themselves and look back at themselves when they're in your sessions? Isn't that extremely awkward for them?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of recording yourself and then listening back to it or looking back to it. And it's one of the hardest things to do. And I know that when I start, doing that with my students, I really have to prepare them for that and do a lot of mindset work before they're able to do that, because we can't hear or look at ourselves. It's somehow we think we sound weird, we look weird. So it's extremely difficult. But I think the only way to really gain confidence is to getting used to how you sound in English, and really learn to see how you sound when you speak and how other people hear you. So that's why I'm a big fan of recording yourself and looking back at it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do.
No, I know that the first time I made a YouTube video, I was like, ooh, do I sound like that?
Yeah, I have the same thing with my podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, so of course we're used to hurting ourselves now. So I think
Mm,
that's good.
yeah.
So of course people are watching and they want to know your expertise, which is this, of course. So what are some tips that you can give the viewers on how to become a confident English as a second language or foreign language speaker?
Well, I think one of the most important tips I can give is let go of the perfectionism.
Oh yeah.
Because we all want to be perfect and we all want to be able to speak perfect English, but we all make mistakes as well. So don't be afraid of making mistakes. Let go of perfectionism. And then another tip is speak. I know it's
Yeah.
difficult, but speak. And if it's really difficult and if you're a really shy speaker, that's okay. Then start speaking by yourself at first. You know, try to think in English, try to speak to yourself in English, try to describe things in your room in English. Start that way, and then start also to record yourself and listen back to it. It's safe because you're the only one listening to it. So then you get used to how you sound in English. You get more comfortable with speaking English, and then you can build it up gradually to really speak to other people. So those are a couple of tips that I think are really important.
Yeah, excellent. I think they're great tips. So start by building some confidence, listening to
Mm,
yourself,
yeah,
talking to yourself just about random stuff is also very useful. We also tell our students to do that. But you
yeah,
know, it's awkward when you're on your own. But the first few
a
times,
little bit.
yeah, the first few times
But
you'll feel weird, but then at some point you'll get over it.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
very
we have
good.
whole complete conversations with ourselves in our heads, right? So why not try
Yeah,
to do it in English? But I
yeah,
always say also speak out loud because you do want to train your muscles, right? Your mouth muscles,
yeah,
your tongue muscles. So you really need to activate that muscle memory as well. So speaking out loud is a good thing to do. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned your podcast. I've seen your podcast on Spotify and on probably some other platforms where you can get your podcast. But what is your podcast about? Is it interesting for international learners of English?
Well, I do have a lot of English episodes, but the last, I think, 16 episodes are in Dutch because I started to focus on Dutch people a lot. But my podcast is completely, it's different from other English learning podcasts because I'm not really speaking about the grammar and the vocabulary, and I'm not really giving a lot of language tips, but I am focusing on mindset and learning a language. So
Okay.
it's a lot about how to overcome insecurity, how to manage your nerves when you have to give a presentation in English, how to use visualization, the importance of setting goals, things like that. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I saw a visualization. I think I want to end with that point. I think that's very interesting. Can you elaborate a bit? How does that work for language learning, visualization and language learning?
Well, I think you can use visualization for just about anything. And I just recorded a podcast about it in Dutch,
Oh,
and it's going online tomorrow because I heard someone say she has a PhD, she's a doctor, and she was talking to someone in a very famous podcast, the School of Greatness, and she said visualization can really alter the cells on in your body on a cell level, and I thought it was extremely interesting. And I use a lot of visualization techniques for my clients. Just have a clear goal, first of all. So really know this is what I want, and then really visualize yourself. For example, doing that presentation in English. Try to be as detailed as possible. What are you wearing? What are your colleagues wearing? Are there any sounds? Can you smell coffee, for example? Or can you hear the rustling of papers? Try to really create a mental picture using all your senses and try to be as detailed as possible of you doing something in English and being very successful at it. Yeah.
wow. Interesting. That even goes as far
Yeah.
as tasting and smelling the coffee. That's good stuff. I think it's
Yeah,
very interesting.
definitely. I
Yeah.
always say the more senses you use, the better it works, actually.
Are you considering recording an English language version of that podcast? Because I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, I'm probably going to do that because I know I also have a lot of English speaking or, international listeners. So it would be a very good idea to do that in English as well.
Yeah.
So why not?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I think you found a niche there. Right, Tess, thank you very much for your very insightful insights on speaking confidently. So I'll link your podcast in the description. Even though it's in Dutch, there are some English episodes. I'll also link your Instagram because you have some very interesting posts about this. So if you're looking for someone or some tips on how to speak English confidently as a holistic and complete approach instead of only focusing on grammar and vocabulary, have a look at Tess, her work. Thank you very much for joining, and maybe we'll see each other again in one of the other episodes. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in one of my next videos.